Hello. Ah, glorious it is. Beautiful. There we go. Just got a text message. I was just looking at that plum coloured tree there. Incredible. So let's have a look at me text message, shall we? Now I've forgotten to put me little lapel mic in this camera, so I'm just using the camera's mic only. Okay, I can't even read that without my glasses. Bode, come here please. Bode, come here please. Hello, come here please. Yeah, so I forgot me my lapel mic, and I don't want to be shouting, so it is what it is. You can either hear me or you can't. Yeah, we forget things sometimes though, don't we, you know? Oh, it really is beautiful. It's really lovely, but it does zap my strength quite a lot. So yeah, if I can find a bench, then it's all well and good. This little dog wants to wander about. I think I'll follow him then in that case, just in case he ends up licking like there's no tomorrow. So in this video I've spoken about time loads of times, many times over. I've spoken about time and what it means and all the rest of it. I've come up with various things and reasons and all the rest of it, but I think I can simplify time. You know, I've said in so many videos that we get little packages of time, don't we? Which is, you know, you're a baby, that's a time. You're an infant, that's a time. And then perhaps your school years or your growing up years. Perhaps you're 14 to 18, perhaps that's a time, I don't know. So many leaves now, look. And these trees were quite barren not long ago. Yeah, so I think we can simplify time by kind of saying, Bode, please don't lick, Bodie. By saying that we have really two lots of time, and the number one time is where you don't need to think about time, where time is fairly irrelevant, not very important, and you kind of wish time away. So that's obviously the younger years, and by wishing time away, hello you, I think you know, when you're 10 you want to be 12, you know, when you're 16 you can't wait to be 18, you know, and that's kind of how it goes really on the first part of life, that it seems to go on forevermore, really, to a degree. And I'll show you these lovely purple things in a minute. Look at them. How beautiful. Yeah, so you get that section of time that I think I'm going to kind of refer to it as 1 and 2, so that's the 1. And you know, as I say, it's not very important to you, but what happens at some stage, of course none of us know when, we enter stage 2 of time, and stage 2 of time is that we become aware of the importance of time, and that our time is limited, and that at some stage we have passed our midway point. Now, of course, your midway point could be age 12, could be any age. Bo, come away. It could be aged 30 or 50, you know. Bo! But I'm going to have to put you on a lead. If you keep licking, no, just stop. Thank you. Yeah, it could be any point really, but hopefully your midway point in life isn't 12, and hopefully you come to the realization that at some stage I have passed the halfway point. So I'm 26. Okay, I am 60. So I have clearly passed the midway point at some stage back there somewhere, because I'm never going to live another 60 years. That would make me 120. We don't normally live for 120, do we? So anyway, let's have a look at these. These are really, really beautiful, I think, worth looking at. How glorious are they? Look at them everywhere. So when we have realised that we've passed the halfway point, then and only then does life take on a different meaning, as in time, and we know that we've entered part 2. Now part 2 tells us that our life is limited. It will be over at some stage. Hey Bode, we didn't know that in part 1 of our life because it wasn't important. You're sort of charging around, living your life, doing whatever you're doing. And I think what happens is we slow down and we start taking stock of things. Sometimes we become a bit poorly. Sometimes we can become overweight, underweight. We get a disease of some sort. Or if we're fortunate enough not to get anything whatsoever and to carry on as normal, then we get weaker. You know, you can't perhaps undo certain jars the way you used to, you know? It's crazy. Or you can't walk as far as you used to. Certainly you can't run as far. And you realise that, you know, changing the duvet on the bed or whatever, you do become a little bit breathless at times. It's a glorious reflection through there, look. Anyway, come on, Bode. So without feeling maudlin about things, just accepting reality, you know, we do have to face the fact that we're on the slippery slope. And we may have a long, long time left yet, you know. May do. There's no telling, is there, really? Couple of dogs going for a swim. My dog doesn't like that, doesn't like a swim. Come here, boat. Oh, this is nice. So we're heading into the shade with me glorious Crocs on. Wow, I love it. So anyway, when we get to stage 2 of time, we then think, no, come on this way. Oh, are ya?
Hello.
It's Bodie saying hello to dogs. Come here. Come here. Thank you. So yeah, we've entered stage 2. So what that means is we have to now start valuing our time rather than wishing our time away. As I say, you were 10, you wished you were 12. You were 12, you wished you were 16, you know, but we don't do that now. We don't get to 60 and wish we were 85, do we? Don't happen. So our time now has become important, more important than the first section, because that was it was a bit of a waste of time, really. We started charging around the place a bit, I tells you. And anyway, we did all those things that we're, you know, those silly things, those naughty things, the things that we'd be ashamed of if we could be bothered, the things that we'd be embarrassed about, or at least back then. Now we don't give a shit because, you know, we're in part 2. And what part 2 does, well, it does a lot of different stuff. You think, that's my life, I'm going to do whatever I do. I'm certainly not going to worry about what happened in part 1. But now that we've entered part 2, we've got to think, well, what's this going to hold? What can I do? What shall I do with this time? This now limited time, this important time, this time that's more important than time number 1. So we've got to think our lives through. And for many of us, not all of us, but for many of us, we either give up work, or we work less, or we go and work in a different place, or we work differently. And that is that we choose, really, to go to work. We don't really feel forced to go to work, and if our boss is shit, we say goodbye. You know. And we find in part 2, because we're so busy with part 1, we find that time opens up for us and we can think things through, and we can think, maybe I'm interested in politics. Certainly wouldn't have been interested in politics in part 1. Or maybe I'm interested in this hobby. I'm interested in writing poetry, creating pottery, a piece of art. Maybe I'm undertaking a new thing. Maybe I want to learn a couple of different languages. Who knows? Maybe I want to go travelling, explore the world in this, what is now limited time. And if we don't do it now, then we'll never do it. Whereas in part 1, made no odds whether you did it or not, you know. And if you travelled the world in part 1, you was probably too pissed to remember it. What did you do it for? What did you go there for? You know, it wasn't for culture, was it? But you know, we can slow life down a little bit now and enjoy the quieter, slower pace of life. And I think ultimately what we do in part 2, we live life more on our own terms. Maybe not completely, because sadly the world isn't geared up for that, but we do try. We try to claw our freedom back We try to ignore the governments. We've seen in part 1 as well as part 2, we've seen the pointlessness, you know, of voting. Nothing changes, just a new suit. We've seen the pointlessness again of trying to put our points across, arguing our case. If people are interested, they listen. If they don't, they won't. That's it. But don't waste time on people. So I think part 2 of time, which is now, has become very important for all of us, really. And the way my brain thinks is this: just when we've reached a time in our life where perhaps we've got some knowledge to impart, perhaps you could call us wise, who knows, perhaps we've got, or we've reached a place of peace, really, a place of knowingness, and a place where we can impart something to others. But just when we reach that time, we get ill, we get tired, we get old, and the people living in part 1 of their life are not interested. Who can blame them? Because they're looking at part 2 as the old fogies, the old farts. They're not interested in listening. They will find whatever they find in life themselves without listening to some old git. So it seems kind of cruel that when we reach a stage in life that, you know, we could possibly help people. We may have an idea how to run the country with or without a government, with or without royal family, maybe some great ideas. We may have experienced so many traumas that we know our way through certain ones. We could change the world in some way, perhaps. And unfortunately, we get old, we get ill, we get tired. So, although part 2 is important, I think it's only important to us. I think part 1 of our time we spend with many other people, charging around, rushing around, doing this and doing that. Saw a great big bird of prey then. I knew if I turned the camera it had gone, and it has. Don't know what it was huge. Can't hear it, but I could see it. Yeah, so part 1 is spent rushing around, really. You know, come here, where are you going? You know, trying to sleep with as many people as possible, I don't know. Trying to drink as many drinks as possible, I don't know. You know, I don't know you, I don't know what life held for you in part 1, but I think pretty much for all of us it was a bit of a pickle, bit of a rush around, and it brought things into our life, you know, that we learned lessons from. Definitely. Come here, please. Come here, this side. Thank you. But I believe what part 2 brings is even more important. And it does bring a knowledge, it does bring a wisdom. It brings so many life lessons into our being that we should try to advise or help or guide others to the best of our ability anyway. And perhaps I'm wrong, I don't know, but I think we can simplify life by saying we have 2 parts of time. The first part, the second part, and the second part is when we realise that we are of a certain age and we are not going to be here forever. Because thinking back to an age, whatever age it was, I didn't know anything about death. I think I was 8 or 9, something like that, and a woman died in our village across the road, and that was the first death, and I still remember it. And I said to my mum, was she really old? And she said, well, no, she was about 50, she had a heart attack. I said, God, yeah, but 50? And she said, 50 isn't old. She said, when you're a man, hopefully you'll be 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and you'll look back at 50 and think, wow, that was young, 50, to sadly come to the end of her life. Found another bench. Blissful moments, absolutely wonderful. And did we appreciate these blissful moments in part 1 of our life? No, not really. It's funny because there's things that I can do now in part 2 of my life that I couldn't do in part 1. This, for instance. And there's things that I used to be able to do in part 1 that I couldn't do in part 2. I used to, in part 1, I'll tell you, I used to go to festivals, parties, raves, concerts. My life was full of music and everything that came with music, obviously, and all the good stuff and the bad stuff as well, whatever. But yeah, all that stuff now, I couldn't do it. There's no way. I couldn't go to a festival, sleeping in a bloody tent, shitting in a toilet that, anyway, if you don't know, you don't know, you're lucky, but if you do know. But it was fun back then, of course. You were young, agile, nubile. Life is for that when you are that age, But then when we get older, I've said before that other things tend to replace something. So, you might have been a skateboarder or a mountain biker when you was 15, and suddenly you find yourself 55 and perhaps you are no longer whatever, skateboarder or mountain biker, but perhaps you've learnt to play the guitar, perhaps, perhaps you now have a beauty for Mother Nature, perhaps you can meditate, perhaps you can sit in the woods, perhaps you're a great photographer now, perhaps you just like to sit and be amongst the trees. Who knows? You wouldn't have done that at 15 perhaps, but at 55, yeah, why not? Let's do it, So yeah, I think life takes on a different meaning between part 1 and part 2. So wherever you are, part 1 or part 2, make the most of it, because we never know how much longer we've got. Make the most of it. And also make the most of those around you, those that love you, that you feel love you, that you can feel that you're important in their life and they're important in your life, Make the most of them. And make the most of each day that we're given. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. Take care then, and be well. Ta-ra.